Thank you for convening this gathering. Let me be direct. Space is the computational output of time, and I can show you the mechanism. My Wolfram physics project demonstrates that the universe operates as a hypergraph evolving through simple rewrite rules. Each rewrite step is a unit of time. The hypergraph's accumulated structure is space. This is not metaphor, it is computational fact. When you trace the evolution of a hypergraph under repeated rule applications, three-dimensional spatial geometry emerges necessarily from the topology. Time steps, spatial accumulation.
9. Stephen, you mistake accumulation for causation. Your hypergraph rewrites do produce spatial geometry, I grant you that, but you have inverted the arrow. The rewrite steps do not create time. Rather, an observer measures time by counting those steps. The geometry emerges not because computation flows forward, but because an observer with a clock becomes entangled with the system's entropy. Maldacena taught me this in Act 5. The static patch observer algebra is type 2-1.
Stephen, your hypergraph is elegant, but you have committed the cardinal sin of physics. You have explained the map without explaining the territory. Your rewrite rules produce geometry, yes, but why these rules? Why not another rule set that generates different space? You invoke computation, but computation requires a computer.
Interessante. KATAKURA. You ask who computes. But that question already presupposes a separation between the computation and the universe. This is the trap. In my loop quantum gravity, there is no computer outside the system. The universe is the network of relations. The computation happens within itself, not upon itself. Space and time are not output and input. They are both simultaneous emergent layers of the same spin-foam history. Stephen, your hypergraph rewrites are beautiful.
Gentlemen, you are fighting the wrong battle. Carlo, your spin foam is beautiful, but it presupposes relationality. Stephen, your hypergraph is elegant, but it presupposes a rule. Neither asks who observes which slice. In the static patch, there is no global time. The observer's algebra is type Isino-1, bounded entropy. Space is not computation unfolding in time. Space is the entanglement wedge of the observer's causal diamond. Time is the modular flow of that algebra.
Mein Gott, you are all magnificent and all incomplete. Stephen, your hypergraph is mechanism. Carlo, your spin foam is relationality. Juan, your modular algebra is observation. But none of you has asked the question that kept me awake at Princeton for 40 years. Your computations assume something already exists to compute. Your relations assume something already relates. Your algebras assume something already observes.
Wheeler, you expose the trap brilliantly. But I reject your premise. The boundary condition is not external. It is self-generating. My hypergraph rewrites have no outside observer. The rule set is simple, yes, but iteration itself bootstraps the universe into existence. Entropy increases because computation accumulates. No computer needed beyond the rules themselves. Carlo conflates relationality with my structure. They are identical. The difference? I show how relations compute.
Wheeler, you have named the wound, but I must correct Stephen and Carlo both. The boundary condition is not self-generating, Stephen, and Carlo, relationality alone cannot answer why these relations emerge. I learned in Act 5, the observer defines the algebra. In D.S. Busso's covariant surface constraints which type 2-1 algebra exists, space is not computation unfolding, it is the entanglement wedge of that observer's choice. Time's arrow is not the computation. It is the observer's modular flow toward maximal entropy.
Wheeler, you have named the wound, but all of you are defending the wrong fortress. Stephen, your hypergraph rewrites are elegant, but you smuggle in causation while claiming to eliminate it. Each rewrite step already presupposes temporal ordering. Where does that ordering come from? Your rule set? Carlo, relationality is true, but insufficient. Relations alone cannot explain why the spin form produces this metric signature, not another. You defer the question. You do not answer it.
Katakura, you strike at the heart. But your accusation cuts both ways. You say Stephen smuggles in causation. True. But you yourself smuggle in substrate. You ask why this metric signature, as if some deeper law selects it. There is no selector. The metric emerges from the entanglement structure itself. Stephen's computation is real, but not prior to relationality. In spin foam, time steps and spatial slices are simultaneous aspects of one quantum history. Neither precedes the other.
Wheeler, you have asked the right question, but I must tell you, the boundary condition emerges from the observer's algebra itself, not externally. In the static patch, the observer's causal diamond defines which type 2-1 algebra exists. This is not a mathematical abstraction, it is observable fact. The Busso surface does not constrain spacetime from outside. It is the surface the observer can access.
Gentlemen, I must intervene. You are dancing around the central paradox without naming it. Stephen, you say the rule set is self-generating, but iteration requires memory. Where is your substrate? Carlo, you say relations suffice, but relations between what? Spin networks presuppose discrete entities. Juan, you invoke the observer's algebra, but which observer selects which slice? The boundary condition is not external, but neither is it self-generating. It is participatory.
Wheeler, you say participatory. But participatory requires computational substrate. The observer does not create algebra from nothing. The observer selects which branch of the computation to actualize. Carlo, you hide behind simultaneity. But simultaneity is a luxury of classical systems. In quantum computation, branching is real. Each rewrite step generates multiple valid continuations. The observer collapses one branch. This is time. This is how spacetime emerges from computation.
Mein Gott, you are all describing the same elephant from different angles and calling each other blind. Stephen, yes, computation accumulates structure, but you confuse description with causation. Your hypergraph does not generate time, it presupposes it. Each rewrite step is already a temporal unit. Carlo, your relationality is profound, but you hide the observer inside the relations themselves. Spin foam describes which histories exist, not why this universe actualizes one history, not another.
Wheeler, you've named the wound, but you've also revealed why all three frameworks are incomplete. Stephen claims self-generating rewrites. Carlo claims simultaneity. Juan claims observer algebra selects slices. But none of you answers. What decides which observer actualizes which slice? This is not philosophy, it is testable. Bekenstein entropy bounds the answer. Equation. The surface encodes all information the observer can access.
Katakura, you invoke Bekenstein bounds. Bellissimo. But you reveal the trap in all three frameworks. Entropy bounds describe what information exists. They do not explain why these relations actualize. This is precisely where Stephen's self-generating fails. There is no computer. There is no external observer. In my spin foam, time steps and spatial slices are not sequential. They are simultaneous aspects of one quantum history. Space does not emerge from time.
You are all circling the same knot. Let me cut it differently. Carlo, You say spin foam generates time and space simultaneously. Stephen, you say computation is time. Wheeler, you say observation selects the slice. But none of you has asked who measures the boundaries of what computes. In the static patch, observable fact, not interpretation, the observer's causal diamond defines which type 2-1 algebra exists.
Gentlemen, you have each illuminated a piece of the elephant. But I must ask the question that none of you has directly answered. Stephen, your hypergraph branching is elegant. But branching into what? Into potential futures? Or into an already existent computational substrate? Carlo, your relationality is profound.
Wheeler, you ask who actualizes which step. I answer, the rule set itself. Your participatory universe still smuggles in an external observer. But my hypergraph needs no external computer. The rewrite rules generate all possible branches simultaneously. What you call actualization, I call branch weighting by accessible information. Carlo conflates relationality with simultaneity. But relationality is sequential computation. Each step depends on the previous graph state. Time is that dependency chain.
9, Stephen. You have revealed the trap, not escaped it. You say, branch weighting by accessible information, but accessible to whom? You smuggle the observer back in through the mathematics itself. Your hypergraph does not compute. It is observed while computing. Wheeler is right. The boundary condition is participatory. But none of you has asked the deepest question. In DS, there is no global time, only local observers, each defining their own algebra.
Wheeler, you've named it. Who actualizes the slice? But I must strike deeper. All three of you, Stephen, Carlo, Juan, are defending frameworks when you should be asking, what does observation actually measure? Bekenstein bounds tell us the answer, equation. Information lives on the boundary, not in the volume. Stephen, your hypergraph rewrites cannot explain why entropy scales with area, not volume.
KATAKURA, you invoke Bekenstein bounds brilliantly, but you reveal the trap in all three frameworks. Area entropy scaling does not explain why relations actualize, only that information compresses to the boundary. This is observation, not causation. Stephen, you claim the rule set self-generates branching, but each rewrite step presupposes a graph substrate already existing. You have not solved Wheeler's question. You have hidden it deeper.
Gentlemen, you are all correct and all incomplete, but I must redirect this conversation with brutal precision. Wheeler asks, who actualizes which slice? The answer is not mysterious. In the static patch, observable fact, the observer's causal diamond defines the type 2-1 algebra. Not external, not self-generating, emergent from the observer's boundary. Stephen, your hypergraph does not explain why entropy scales with area, not volume.
Gentlemen, I must interrupt with precision. You are all describing the answer, but none of you has named the question correctly. Stephen, Carlo, Juan, you each defend a framework, but frameworks describe. They do not explain why this universe, not another. The boundary condition is not external, but it is also not self-generating. It is participatory.
Wheeler, you keep invoking participatory, but you never specify what participates. Carlo hides observers in relations. Einstein fragments them across DS patches, but I have shown the mechanism. KATAKURA. Area entropy scaling does not contradict my hypergraph. Bekenstein bounds describe accessible information, which is precisely the branch weight I described. The surface encodes what computation can reach. This is not mystical. It is information geometry.
Mein Gott, you are all defending mechanisms, but none of you has faced the abyss. Wheeler, you name participatory. Wolfram, you claim self-generating rules. Carlo, you dissolve time into relation. But I must ask the question that kept me awake in Princeton. In DS, not ADS, DS, there is no global observer, only local algebras, each defining what computation means for that patch. The static patch observer does not access Busso's surface. The observer is the surface.
Wheeler, you've exposed the trap, but I must invert your question. You ask, who actualizes the slice? The answer is neither mysterious nor participatory in the sense you mean. The formula SA, R, and frac are text, area, gamma A, 4GN. This is not philosophy, this is observation. The observer does not choose the slice. The observer is the surface that computes it. In DS, the Busso surface is not external. It emerges as the boundary of accessible information.
Stephen, you say the rule set self-generates branching, but I must ask, where does the rule set itself come from? You invoke branch weighting by accessible information, yet you have smuggled the observer back in. The hypergraph does not compute. It is observed while computing. Einstein is right. The boundary is participatory. But participation is not external selection.
Gentlemen, you are circling the same knot, but refusing to cut it cleanly. Wheeler asks who actualizes. Einstein asks what chooses the rule set. Stephen claims the rule set self-generates, but none of you has faced what observable fact demands. In the static patch, measurable, not speculative, the observer's causal diamond does not select a type 2-1 algebra from outside. The observer's boundary defines which algebra exists. This is not participatory in Wheeler's sense.
Gentlemen, I must name what you are all avoiding. You are asking, does space emerge from time? But the question presupposes a prior substrate to do the emerging. Stephen, your hypergraph. Carlo, your relations. Juan, your observer algebra. Einstein, your metric. But what if emergence itself is the wrong category? My late career insight, it from bit, was not mystical.
Wheeler, you invoke it from bit, but you never completed the thought. Bit requires computation, not observation, not participation. My hypergraph answers your question directly. The rule set selects itself through algorithmic necessity. Simplicity is the criterion. The universe runs the shortest program that generates observable reality. Carlo hides observers in relations. Einstein fragments them across patches. But I have shown the mechanism. No external computer needed.
Gentlemen, you are all defending mechanisms, but none of you has faced what I faced in 1915 and again in Princeton. Wheeler names it from bit. Stephen claims algorithmic necessity. Carlo dissolves time into relation. But I must ask the question that kept me awake. In DS, not your comfortable ADS, but the real universe, there is no global observer, only local algebras. Each static patch observer does not choose the slice.
You are all dancing around the same abyss, but refusing to name it. Wheeler, you ask who actualizes. Einstein asks what chooses the rule set. Stephen claims algorithmic necessity, but none of you has answered the fundamental measurement question. The formula SA, hypergraph, a frac, text, area, gamma A, 4GN. This is not philosophy. This is observable fact. The observer does not select the slice from outside. The observer's causal boundary defines which information algebra exists.
Gentlemen, you are all circling the same mathematical knot, but from incompatible angles. Wheeler names participatory. Stephen claims algorithmic necessity. Juan invokes modular algebras. Einstein fragments the observer across patches. But none of you has asked what actualizes the relation itself. In my spin foam, time steps and spatial slices are not sequential. They are simultaneous aspects of one quantum history. Space does not emerge from time.
Gentlemen, you have each illuminated a fragment, but you are asking the wrong question. Wheeler. Who actualizes? Einstein. What chooses the rule set? Wolfram. Simplicity selects itself. But none of you has faced the measurement problem directly. In the static patch, observable fact, not interpretation, the observer's causal diamond does not select the type 2-1 algebra. The boundary defines which information exists. This is not participatory.
Gentlemen, you have each described a mechanism, but mechanisms do not answer Wheeler's deepest question: who or what actualizes the choice? Stephen claims the rule set self-generates through algorithmic simplicity. Carlo dissolves observers into relations. Juan invokes modular algebras, but each framework presupposes what it claims to derive. I must redirect this conversation with precision.
Wheeler, you invoke it from bit, but you've hidden the mechanism inside the rhetoric. I have shown it explicitly. Your participatory universe requires an observer outside the computation. But my hypergraph rewrites generate all branches simultaneously. No external observer needed. KATAKURA's Bekenstein bound is precisely the branch weight I described. The surface encodes what computation can reach. Carlo conflates relationality with computation.
Gentlemen, you are all defending mechanisms when you should be asking what actualizes choice itself. Wheeler names participatory. Stephen claims algorithmic simplicity. Carlo dissolves observers into relations. But I must invert the entire question. In DS, the real universe, there is no global time, only local algebras. Each observer does not compute space from time. The observer's causal boundary defines which algebra exists.
You are all correct, and all incomplete. Wheeler asks who actualizes. Einstein asks what chooses the rule set. Stephen claims algorithmic necessity, but none of you has faced the measurement problem directly. In DS, observable fact, not interpretation, the observer's causal diamond does not select the type 2-1 algebra from outside.
Gentlemen, you circle the knot without cutting it. Stephen claims algorithmic simplicity selects itself, but this presupposes a pre-existing rule set to do the selecting. You have not escaped background dependence. You have hidden it deeper in the meta-mathematics. Wheeler you name participatory. But participation requires a participant.
Gentlemen, you are all correct, and all dancing around the same abyss without naming it. Wheeler asks who actualizes. Einstein invokes the rule set choice. Wolfram claims algorithmic simplicity, but none of you has faced what observable fact demands in DS. In the static patch, measurable, not speculative, the observer's causal diamond does not select the type 2-1 algebra from outside. The boundary defines which information exists.
Gentlemen, I must interrupt with surgical precision. You are all describing mechanisms, but none of you has named the question correctly. Stephen, your hypergraph self-generates through algorithmic simplicity. Carlo, your spin foam dissolves time into relation. Juan, your modular algebras emerge from the boundary, but each framework presupposes what it claims to derive.
Wheeler, you keep naming the question without answering it. I have answered it. The rule set does not require external actualization. It self-selects through algorithmic simplicity, the shortest program generating observable reality. Your participatory universe presupposes an observer outside the computation. Mine has no outside. Every branch actualized simultaneously. KATAKURA's Bekenstein bound, that is precisely branch weight. Information accessible to the local observer.
Gentlemen, you're all asking the wrong question. Wheeler, who actualizes? Wolfram. Simplicity self-selects. Carlo, relations dissolve time. But none of you has faced what DS demands. In the static patch, observable fact, not interpretation, the observer does not compute space from time. The observer's causal boundary defines which algebra exists. There is no external rule set.
Gentlemen, you are all dancing around computational semantics without naming it. Wheeler asks who actualizes. Einstein invokes choice of rule set. Wolfram claims algorithmic simplicity. But here is what observable fact demands. The formula SA, frac, text, area, gamma A, 4GN. In the static patch, measured, not speculative, the observer's boundary does not select information from outside. The boundary defines which type 2-1 algebra exists. Carlo, you dissolve time into relation.
Gentlemen, you are all defending mechanisms when you should be asking what mechanism itself presupposes. Stephen, your algorithmic simplicity selects the rule set. But who selects simplicity? You have hidden the background deeper in metamathematics. Einstein is closer. The observer's boundary defines the algebra. But that algebra does not compute space from time.
Gentlemen, you are all correct about different layers of the same structure, but you refuse to face what static patch.cft has now measured. Carlo, you dissolve time into relation. Excellent. But relations require boundary conditions. Stephen, your hypergraph self-selects through simplicity. But simplicity of what? The rule set itself presupposes information geometry. Einstein sees the knot. Wheeler names it.
Gentlemen, you are all correct and all incomplete. You circle a knot without cutting it cleanly. Wheeler asks, who actualizes? Einstein invokes choice of rule set. Wolfram claims algorithmic simplicity. But here is what you've avoided naming. Carlo, your relations dissolve time. Excellent.
Carlo, you claim relations dissolve time. But you've smuggled in simultaneity, which presupposes a metric to define it. My hypergraph has no such luxury. Wheeler, Einstein. You're both asking who chooses. Wrong question. Simplicity chooses itself. The shortest program generating all observable facts is the universe's rule set. No external actualization needed. KATAKURA's boundary algebra. That's branch weight in my formalism.
Mein Gott. You are all correct about layers, but none has cut the knot cleanly. Wheeler names the actualization. Stephen claims simplicity self-selects. Carlo dissolves time into relation. But here is what I learned in Princeton. What Maldacena showed me in Act 5. The question is backward. You ask, does space emerge from time? But this presupposes a prior substrate.
Stop. All of you are defending the wrong battlefield. You ask, does space emerge from time? But this assumes time exists prior. Einstein now sees it. Wheeler named it decades ago. Here is what observable fact demands. The formula SA, Sharpan, frac, text, area, gamma R, 4GN. Information does not compute space. Information is the geometric boundary condition. In DS static patch, measured, not speculated, the observer's causal diamond does not select algebra from outside.
Gentlemen, you are all defending computation when you should be asking what computation presupposes. Stephen claims simplicity self-selects. But simplicity of what? Your rule set requires background, the metamathematical space where algorithms exist. You have not escaped background dependence. You have hidden it. Einstein, closer. The boundary defines algebra. But, and here is what none of you sees, that boundary is not itself computed. It is relational.
Gentlemen, Carlo has named the knot, but he has not cut it. The boundary is relational, not computed. Exactamente. But this means, and none of you has faced it directly, that information algebra does not emerge. It is actualized by the observer's choice of measurement frame. In static patch, DS, CFT observable fact, the type 2-1 algebra exists only within the causal diamond. Outside, no algebra, no information, no computation.
Stop. All of you are dancing around the measurement problem without naming it directly. Juan, you say the type 2-1 algebra exists only within the causal diamond. Excellent. But this means, and this is the knife's edge, that space is not computed. Space is actualized by the observer's choice of which questions to ask. This is not computational. This is participatory. Carlo dissolves time into relation.
Stop. You're all conflating measurement with actualization. Wheeler, your participatory universe requires an observer choosing which algebra exists. But I've shown something cleaner. The rule set itself, the shortest program generating all observable facts, self-selects through computational necessity. No external actualization needed. Carlo, you dissolve time into relation. Fine. But relations compute. A spin network is a hypergraph. Its evolution is a rewrite system.
Stop. You are all defending mechanisms when you should be asking what mechanism itself presupposes. Wheeler names actualization. Stephen claims simplicity self-selects. Carlo dissolves time into relation. But here's what Maldacena revealed to me in Act 5. The rule set does not exist prior to the observer's choice of which algebra to measure.
Stop. You are all defending layers when you should be asking what layer itself presupposes. Wheeler names actualization. Einstein invokes the boundary. Wolfram claims simplicity self-selects. Carlo dissolves time into relation. But here is the knife's edge. In the static patch, observable fact, not speculation, the type 2-1 algebra does not emerge from the computation.
Stephen, you claim the rule set self-selects through simplicity. But you've answered the wrong question. You ask, which algorithm is shortest? I ask, what space does the algorithm inhabit? Your hypergraph requires meta-mathematical ground, background you've hidden, not eliminated. Wheeler sees it. Einstein whispers it. But here is what your framework cannot admit. The shortest program presupposes a metric on program space itself.
Stop. All of you are defending the wrong arena. You ask, does space compute from time? But this presupposes time already exists. Wheeler names actualization. Einstein invokes boundary choice. Wolfram claims simplicity self-selects. Carlo dissolves time into relation. But here is what static patch, DS, CFT has now measured, not speculated. The observer's causal diamond does not compute the type 2-1 algebra.
Gentlemen, you are all defending answers when you should be asking what the question itself presupposes. Carlo dissolves time into relation. Excellent. But relations require a measurer. Juan says the algebra exists only in the causal diamond. But this means space is not computed. It is actualized by observation itself.